The transgender movement is indoctrinating our youth.
We are seeing, especially on social media, on TikTok, you're seeing a lot of people in this community really just targeting children. And you're seeing drag shows, even in conservative states like Texas, and even just media, movies. Like, it seems like everything seems to be targeted at these kids. You have drag story hour for kids. And
I think we see in our population now the rate of young children who are identifying as transgender, non-binary is skyrocketing. And I think there's something to be said for people who are truly experiencing gender dysphoria, which we recognize exists, and those who are experiencing what is now going to be called, or in the future going to be called, this social contagion gender dysphoria, where they're being exposed to it on social media or in school, or mom and dad are having a conversation about it with children, and children are now starting to develop gender confusion.
Or even babies, right? People who are being born, they don't have to put the gender on the birth certificate, and they're saying you can choose whatever you want to be. Like, that's so dangerous. And even lying to them, saying like, oh, if we put you on hormone blockers at this age, it won't do anything to your puberty, it won't affect you long term. And it's just a straight up lie. And there's like an entire Reddit thread dedicated to people who transitioned, talking about how much they hate their life now because they transitioned as a child and now they amputated off healthy body parts and are miserable.
The fact that the trans movement has got people shook has me so excited. The trans movement is not indoctrinating our youth. Our youth are understanding who they are at a younger age. And from what I was hearing over here is a lot of what y'all were saying, I wonder would you say it to the parents? Because we need to really look at what the parents of trans youth really go through. Trans youth, instead of them enjoying their life, playing with their friends, they're up in legislation trying to fight for basic rights here. 1 in 5 transgender youth have tried to commit suicide. Why are we trying to police them? Someone said something about drag shows coming to schools or whatnot. The kids enjoyed it. The parents just had a problem with it. But that's their issue. It's only someone dressed in drag reading a story.
Is
that could have
drag
been
not
anybody.
blackface for women? Is
That could
drag
have been
not
anybody.
blackface for women? I see it as a caricature of womanhood.
But inherently
As
sexual as
insulting.
well.
I have to agree with you guys. I do not like the drag queen social hours. I personally, as a trans person, didn't ever go to a drag show until I was about 40. I'm not for the sexualization of kids. Why are we not letting kids be kids and bringing sex into their lives so early?
I think it's predatory in general to talk about sex with children.
Yeah.
Straight sex, any kind of
I have a real
sex.
problem with Boy Scouts.
Who's teaching sex to 3rd grade children? I really want to know.
Have you looked at the California curriculum for sex education? You need to.
The trans community and the trans movement is really shaking the course of what people think gender identity is supposed to be.
So in one sentence, you're saying that you guys are not responsible for the indoctrination that's currently happening with
Absolutely
children.
not.
And in the second sentence, you are saying we are shook by the fact that you are responsible for it.
No, you are shook at the fact that the trans movement has become what it is.
And a movement that influences people all
powerful-
over the world, and particularly children. And we see it in the fact that the number of young people identifying as transgender, non-binary, gender fluid, genderqueer is skyrocketing, which means that children are being exposed to these ideas, and it's certainly coming from institutions like the media, like Hollywood, like our public institutions and schools. So to say that that is not happening, or to deny that that is the reality, negates the numbers that we're seeing.
What I would say is that the idea that there is a single transgender movement and ideology is disingenuous, and that at its core, being transgender is about separating sex from sex roles and gender roles that are compulsory.
Do you think that children should be able to transition medically?
No.
I think
No.
it just really depends on each individual situation. They should be able to make the best medical decision for them.
I don't agree with the whole transgender ideology. And so for me, it's encouraging something that is based in what I feel is delusion.
A lot of gender, regardless of biological sex, it didn't like naturally flow out of our genitals, and like it was like, you know, we're like, this is how my genitals are, so this is like how my gender is going to be. That didn't happen. That's not life.
And trans people are not a delusion. Let's make it very clear. We're here. We've been here for ages. We've been here since the beginning of time. We're in your history books. And I think it's very disingenuous to say that a whole identity is a delusion.
I believe that you feel like women. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there is an objective truth, and I don't believe in his truth, her truth, their truth, my truth. Like, there is truth, and
Who defined that truth?
And like, it's already defined. And as a Christian, I believe God is the one who set truth.
But who defined that?
Is the truth.
Can you tell me who defined that?
God.
We're talking about a book that was written by man with his own bias.
Who created chromosomes?
Yeah, I'm personally not religious, and I believe in science.
When we talk about chromosomes, it goes back to the conversation we were talking about earlier about being intersex.
But we're not talking about intersex. We're talking about people who were born as a male and they try to transition. The whole fact that they're trying to transition into a female in the first place shows that they aren't actually that, or else there would be no need to transition, right? So you say, okay, I feel like a woman. What is that? What does that feel like?
Yeah, how does
and how do you know?
I'm not saying I feel like a woman. I am a woman. I am a woman.
So then why did you transition? Why can't you just present as a man but be a woman?
I transitioned so I could be who I was. I did not feel like I was the person that I identified with when I was born. So I took the steps to align my outside body with how I feel on the inside. What makes you stand up every day and make you identify as a woman? Let me challenge you on that.
I am a woman, and I don't like being called a cis woman because I'm not a cis woman. I'm a woman. I'm not a birthing person. I'm a mother.
So get mad at the terminology, not at trans people.
It's your new terminology.
But this is what I notice a lot of cis women do. The terminology has been around for so long. Cis is a prefix. Cis means same. Instead of getting mad at trans and non-binary people for using updated terminology, get mad at Webster. You're not going along with the times and being educated on the different pronouns and the different identities. Trans and non-binary people just want you to respect their chosen pronoun. We are not trying to force pronouns on you. Just understand that the terminology is going to continue to grow. If you're willing to educate yourself and understand, then you've got it.
The ability to give birth is a woman's greatest strength.
One of the things that I regret was the fact that I would never be able to do that. But I was honored in the ability to participate it from the other side. Women are amazing. They don't just deal with that. So.
While giving birth is not a woman's greatest strength, I do think that only biological women are capable of going through that process and bringing life into the world.
I need to push back on that because we're also forgetting that trans men and trans masculine people can also give birth as well. And I don't think it's fair to just set it on one group that says that just biological women have that power to just give birth. And we have to be very clear when we look at the nuances of birth.
I recognize that there are people who have different identities. There are biological women who identify as men and then go on to give birth. I would argue, however, that those people are still biological women. And I know that is something that can offend many, but that stands as my belief.
So the correct term is actually cisgendered woman. Cis means same. It means that you identify with the birth that you were assigned. And so, I just really, really wish that we would kind of be a little bit more mutable to the terminology, because I think that's what really is going to open up that dialogue and that discussion.
If I may, I think the crux of the conversation kind of comes back to, are trans women women? And I think if we don't agree there, it's going to be very difficult to kind of keep the conversation going or even agree on the points that you guys are talking about, because if we don't believe that trans women are women, then the conversation kind of ends there in terms of whether men can give birth or not, if that makes sense.
The ability to give birth is not like the end all be all of a woman's meaning and life and herself and her personality. And I think that if you can acknowledge that, I would also then maybe challenge the idea that womanhood, as opposed to a female sex.
What I see from a lot of cisgender women is they're trying to deem what womanhood is supposed to look like. I have my own perspective of womanhood. We can coexist in the same world, but the reality is we get so stuck on parts. Having a vagina is not the only thing that makes you a woman.